welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guest on this next interview. After the Czech parliamentary elections of 3rd and 4th of October 2025, Andrej Babiš ANO party has secured the most seats with about 35% of the vote, overtaking the former ruling coalition. But ANO lacks an outright majority and must now navigate coalition talks with Fringe and right-wing parties as well. Joining us now is Čulík, senior lecturer in Czech studies at the University of Glasgow, to help us unpack what this result means for Czech politics, Europe, and democracy. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Hello.
So how would you interpret ANO's electoral victory? Do you think this is a verdict on an outgoing government or a mandate for a new direction?
No, that's an interesting question. Quite a lot of commentators are, even Czech Public Service Radio yesterday were saying that basically Petr Fiala, the outgoing prime minister, caused it because they didn't really deal with the fact that quite a lot of people in the country were poor. And so basically people kind of put their economic well-being above everything. And there's, of course, a great question whether really Babiš will do anything for them. But nevertheless, he is saying that he will. I would like to actually say that it's quite interesting. There are all these comments about, is Babiš going to move Czech Republic towards Russia? He actually was expressly saying that he was not going to do this, although question is whether we can trust him. In the last few days before the elections, he became really quite centrist, right? And but unfortunately, he's now reliant on these two absolutely extreme political parties. And one interesting point is that they actually have each of them contrary views, right? The motorists want to stay in NATO and in the European Union. Those maniacs in the SPD want to leave European Union and NATO. So how can Babiš actually align himself with these people who are actually fighting amongst themselves? It's a total mess, mercifully. So maybe his government isn't going to be as strong as we thought.
Now, this brings me to an interesting question. Like you mentioned, now the possibility is to either align with the far left, far right, most of the more kind of fringe and extreme parties. Do you think that it's perhaps a misstep by the former ruling party to outright reject forming any sort of coalition with the ANO party in order to at least bring them to a more moderate position?
Somebody was actually saying again on Czech radio yesterday that there is so much personal enmity in Czech parliament that apparently it kind of makes it impossible for people to make rational decisions. There were views expressed, but only by political commentators, that actually if ANO joined with some of the more reasonable parties of the former Czech government coalition, people like the Pirates or the mayors, starostové, whatever, that it would really be, it could be quite kind of helpful. But unfortunately, as we are saying, Babiš is going with these two extreme parties. However, there are other commentators who are saying that maybe Babiš will be actually quite capable of luring various individual MPs from the Fiala party, from the Civic Democratic Party, to support him. So nothing is sure. And certainly it isn't sure whether he's going to pursue this totally extreme right-wing policy. But one important point is that Babiš is a maverick. And originally he started as a relatively kind of left-of-center politician. Then he's turned around and he's joined in the European Parliament this extreme right-wing political club. So it is totally unclear what's going to happen.
All right, you just mentioned perhaps there's a possibility of luring some other voters into his cause. We saw in this election that the SPD party did not do as well as some people have predicted to do, and a lot of people attributed it to the fact that the ANO party might have absorbed some of its voters. Do you think that that's a leverage from the ANO's in Ano's favor, or do you think that that might make them more likely to align with the SPD when it comes to coalition building?
Well, it's interesting. Quite a lot of commentators have been saying, and this is what Babiš has to take on board, that communist club coalition totally lost, didn't get beyond the 5% of support, so they are not going to be in parliament at all. And so commentators are saying, look, actually, there isn't so much popular support in the Czech Republic for aligning themselves with Russia, which is what those communists would have done.
Nice.
So actually, Babiš has to watch it. And maybe this is why he was saying after the elections that he's strongly for NATO and that he's against Russia. So, but of course, there is this issue of, the only place where he can get support from are basically right-wing parties. So the government will undoubtedly be right-wing.
All right. Well, even if the other coalition from the previous government, it does get into power, aren't they also relatively right-wing compared to other European parties? We saw left-wing parties perform very poorly within this election cycle. Is it a broader trend across the country, or do you think that there's still a struggle between the left and the right?
I think basically the left wing in the Czech Republic is kind of lost. The Social Democrats discredited themselves by joining that communist coalition. And also the Social Democrats made a fairly major mistake of flirting with nationalist populism. And that is not what a left-wing party does. There is this pirate party, which is mildly left of center, but it's still really fairly right-wing. And they actually strengthen their position in parliament because, as commentators are saying, there is no left-wing party in the Czech Republic. So at least those people who felt left-wing voted at least for those pirates because they were the least right-wing party in politician. But it is an interesting point that there is no left-wing political movement really in the Czech Republic, apart from a very small grouping which got some sort of 2,000 or 3,000 votes. So that is basically unrealistic. It can't do anything.
Right. A lot of people are saying that one of the reasons why Petr Fiala lost the election is also his failure to communicate some of the economic progress that actually have taken place during his government. And also, Babiš has been promising a lot more kind of economic prosperity, which, of course, is a lot of what the voters voted for in this round of elections. Do you think that if the economic situation do not improve, this will be kind of a pendulum swing back to the Petr Fiala's party instead of continuing the same trend that we're seeing right now?
Well, that's an interesting point. There are a couple of very good economic analysts on the Czech scene, and they have been actually telling the Fiala government that actually the economic situation is very bad, that the Czech government is taxing poor people and allowing rich people, oligarchs, without proper taxes, and that this is going to destabilize the country. And they ignored it. One of these economic analysts, Filip Pertol, this morning said the previous government had not any proper economically educated people, and this government is going to have absolute maniacs in connection with economics. Czech people expect the worst. And one other commentator has been saying, look, it is not out of the question that Babiš might actually continue this impoverishment policy in the Czech Republic because populists do need people who are unhappy, and he could actually channel this kind of unhappiness or hatred of the general population for some of his questionable political aims. Maybe this is too pessimistic, but of course nothing can be ruled out at the moment.
Right. A lot of people are looking at this election cycle in a very more geopolitical lens as well, and wondering how will this change foreign policy? Do you think that this is going to have a major impact? Because, like we're saying, there's a lot of uncertainty here. He's made various different statements when it comes to Europe, when it comes to NATO, when it comes to Ukraine. Where do you think things will lead from this point on?
Well, the problem with Babiš, as I've said, he's a total maverick, and we can't actually. It is true that he will probably really protect his own business interest. This is incidentally one other thing. When talking to the Czech president, there are problems because Babiš is actually being sued for making some illegal applications for European funding, and these are millions, and he might have to return this, otherwise he might end up in prison. It would be very interesting whether such a person even can be appointed prime minister. The other point is that he's an oligarch. He owns this huge sort of business called Agrofert. In order to become a prime minister, he should really sort of put all this property aside and not to manage it. So there are these questions. So on the one hand, okay, he's going to protect his private interests. He will be quite pragmatic. But on the other hand, if you look at his past history, he's really moved politically from one sort of part of the political spectrum to another. So it is absolutely unclear what he is going to be doing. He is admiring Trump. He is admiring Viktor Orban. But he was saying that he's admiring the methods of their government, not necessarily their politics. Whatever that means, we don't know.
Right, like I said, there's importance in making that distinction as well. Now, my last question would be on the Czech president, because he has been stating that perhaps he can serve as a bulwark against some of the more extreme position if the prime minister decides to take it. So, do you think he has any power or leverage to limit some of the policy position and direction if it does go out of hand somehow?
Well, he certainly did say that he wasn't going to appoint ministers who would be pro-Russian or whatever, but I think this is basically out of the question, considering that the communist coalition basically lost. And as I said before, I think even Babiš will watch it, because since the pro-Russian coalition lost, he now knows that it's not popular in the Czech Republic to be pro-Russian. So I think this question probably will not arise, although obviously we can't predict the future.
Right. Do you think that the populist nature of the the prime minister might give us sort of a surprise if the populists do decide to go the direction of a more pro-Western one? Can we see actually a Western turn as well?
Well, it is really interesting because, as I'm saying, those minority parties, especially that SPD, is very unstable, because that SPD actually consists of a block of various other parties. And Babiš is now saying this morning, as we speak, that he's actually negotiating with them to form some kind of a coalition, but maybe he would just want to have a minority government and have just kind of tacit support by these people. But the problem is, as I keep saying, that they are really, really quite crazy. And it's a possibility that Babiš will be able to, will want to try to, as I said also before, to get some of the MPs from the Civic Democratic Party. Or one interesting point was, if the Civic Democratic Party actually agreed to cancel the Green Deal, maybe those motorists would go with the ODS, with the Civic Democratic Party, and then it would be a return of Fiala's government.
Right. So we might actually be seeing various different sort of reshuffling between alliances within the government, and of course things
really
are very, very interesting and uncertain as well.
Yeah. At the moment, it is Babiš, of course.
Thank you so much for your input and insight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
And thank you for tuning into this edition of World Talks. But for more, stay tuned to TVP World.